What's up, everybody? What's up, everybody? Is the Arkatech Beatz Music Business Podcast. I am your host, Juggernaut. My partner, Mike Trauma G, is under the weather this week, so we wish him a speedy recovery. But we are Arkatech Beatz collectively, and we are platinum producers who have basically worked with all of the great, super great artists, new and old, throughout the industry. And what we do every week is we get together and we bring you information about the music business, tips, resources, just some insight on the things that are going on, and just kind of show people ways that they can navigate this thing that we call the music business or music industry. It gets real crazy sometimes, and we decided to be a resource for people who might need that. But today we wanted to kind of get into, I follow a few people online, and I see different information, and a lot of the information that they provide, it's always kind of centered around a cut and dry scenario for different type of things. But today specifically, I wanted to talk about when to really get the business involved when you're creating music with others, right? So let's say, for example, you're a singer, you're a songwriter, you're collaborating with people, and there's always a question as to when do I get the lawyers involved, or when do I present the split sheet, or when do we take care of the business, right? And there's really no right or wrong way. Some folks say, hey, take care of the business up front. Some people will say, hey, take care of the business as soon as you can take care of the business. Get your lawyer involved immediately. And I'm not sure if that's the right advice. And, some folks will crucify me for this and saying, hey, you're not giving the artist the right information. They got to protect themselves and things of that nature. There are ways to protect yourself. But the thing that I don't think people want to talk about in this business is that if you're a songwriter, if you're an artist, if you're a producer, the thing that gets you furthest in this business, and this is me talking from 20 plus years experience, have worked with the biggest of the big, right? We're talking the Nas's of the world, the Wu-Tangs of the world, Mobb Deeps, Waka Flocka, you name them, we've worked with them. It's about the relationships, right? And if you don't have a good working relationship with these artists, none of it matters, right? You can hire a lawyer 10 times over, you can present all kind of paperwork 10 times over, but if your relationship with these artists are not well, if they're not good, your situation is not going to progress. And that's just my experience, and that's what I've seen for as long as I've been doing this thing here. Typically, what you see happening is that no one wants to really be sued. Everybody knows about the liability that can take place, right? There's not a situation that we're talking about where artists are not aware that people cannot sue you, right? You can get sued if you're going to steal people's music, and all you have to really do is just show that you were there, and the email chains and things of that nature, and it puts people in a box. So I think the connotation that we're living in some sort of old era where there aren't emails and there aren't text messages and things of that nature to prove certain things. Like those things exist, so those things provide levels of protection. That's the first thing. The second thing is, if as a new artist you want to come in to these writing sessions or these recording sessions, and you want to build the relationships with the people who have the ability to release the music to get you paid. If you're not doing that, then you're kind of doing everything in vain. And what I've seen in my experience is that when you're going a little bit too headstrong, trying to immediately talk about what the splits are, immediately trying to talk about the attorneys and how we're going to handle the business on this record before the record is even finished, 9 times out of 10, that song, sometimes as good as it might sound, most likely won't come out. And what happens is that, and the reason for that is that you're immediately dubbed as a headache, right? And as soon as you're labeled as a headache for a business headache, people don't want to deal with that. People want to deal with people who are going to be a lot more agreeable. And you may say, well, that's not the right approach. Well, if you're just trying to get in, that's the only approach, right? Like, if you're trying to get in, and if you haven't really established yourself, and you're not really an artist that has a track record, then your best bet is really to just kind of make sure that the music happens organically, that the artist falls in love with this song and has to have this song. And you have to make sure that happens, and you have to create that environment where the artist just loves what you're bringing to the table, loves your vibe, and you create these songs. And of course, the main thing that you want to do is make sure that you get your copies, etc. And there are things that you can do in the background to just kind of protect yourself, right? Now, and when I say things that you can do in the background, you can take your own music and the things that you wrote, and you can copyright those things. So those things are dated and time-stamped, etc., to kind of protect yourself in case, the business doesn't get handled as it should. And typically, it does get handled if you're dealing with artists who are in the business, who are legitimately doing things. Then you can handle that type of situation. But if you're able to take copies of your music, if you have your lyrics and you have those type of things, your melodies, etc., if those things are like recorded in your phone or so forth and so on, those things can be taken and those things can be copyrighted, and those can be that basically will serve as your legal protection against anything that may come out, that if everything is not done the way that it needs to be done, right? But the main thing that I want to put out there is that your goal as a person who is either writing, producing, and you're working with new artists, your goal is to get this song released, right? If this song doesn't get released, there's no income to fight about, right? The song has to get released. The song has to become published in some way or fashion in order for it to be heard by the public, in order for it to generate some type of income. What I see happening in the beginning is people are moving too quickly, and they are stifling the process of the music by just talking about things that shouldn't be talked about prior to the music being completed, right? If the music isn't being completed, if the body of work isn't being completed, if there's no release date, if there's none of those things going on, then what are we talking about? There's nothing to talk about if it's not going to be released. There's nothing to talk about if there's no plan for it to be released anytime soon, right? And for those who jump the gun and say, hey, go get your lawyer involved, you're just going to be wasting a lot of your money, right? In my experience, I see that if you're going to get your lawyers involved, the lawyer should be involved at the very, very end. Right? Or you say, well, what do you mean at the very, very end? It should be done at the beginning. No, you want to involve your lawyer when payment is imminent, right? Because it's going to cost you money to get it reviewed. So you want to be able to make sure that there's going to be something to compensate you for the fees that you're going to have to pay in order to have any of your contracts or any of your situations reviewed, right? So what you don't want to do is you don't want to run around saying, hey, I'm getting all of these things reviewed, paying lawyer fees, right? Because, contracts can cost anywhere between $500 and $1,500, $2,500 to be reviewed, right? You're doing that, and you don't have any music coming out. You don't have any way to earn any income to get that money back. And that's just the reality of the situation. It's like, we're getting people involved, and it's kind of a racket. You're kind of getting people involved in things, and, you're spending your money, and there's no ROI for you. There's no way for you to get your money back, right? So it's like, hey, you want to do this, you want to do that, and, yeah, we want to get this straight and we want to get that straight. Yeah, you want to do that, but at the same time, you want to make sure that there's going to be a way for you to get that money back, right? Because if we're doing business with folks, and this is probably an old school situation or whatever you might want to call it, but if you're doing business with folks and and you have concerns about whether or not you're going to be dealt with appropriately, you should really consider or reconsider doing business with those folks. Like, that's just being honest, right? We work with some of the biggest artists, and not once did we have to worry about them not taking care of the business, right? And they had all of the leverage. They could have given us shitty terms, and they didn't do that, right? They just didn't do that, and that just goes to the integrity of certain artists, producers, and people in the business. If you're finding that you have to run around and everything has to be about you protecting what you have or protecting yourself, and you have to really be concerned, overly concerned about that. Don't get me wrong, I'm not telling people not to handle their business, but if you have to be overly concerned about that, always looking over your shoulder and worrying if you're going to get jerked on certain situations, you have to really consider whether it's really worth working with these folks in the first place. Like, what are you gathering? What are you gaining from that? Right? By really going around trying to work with folks who are basically out to rob you. It just doesn't make sense. Right? So I say that just to kind of get people really to understand what's going on in this situation. It's like, I see it too often. It's like everyone wants to take a copy of Donald Passman's book and make it feel as if everything goes cut and dry the way it goes. It doesn't do that. And out of the hundreds of times that I've been in the studio with different artists, it just never plays out like it plays out into the book, right? It's like, it's good for the book to have some general knowledge of what's going to happen and what you can expect. But in these situations, it takes a lot of social savvy, right? So that you can understand when to navigate these situations, when to have those conversations with the artist, right? Sometimes when you're just trying to build that relationship, those aren't the best time to have those conversations. In some cases, we don't have those conversations with the artist at all, right? Sometimes we just say, hey, who's your representation? We'll send everything that way. And we never have those conversations sometimes with the artist because those conversations can be very tense, right? Typically, you give those to the third parties, and then the third parties, they hash it out so that your relationship with the artist doesn't get ruined. And folks don't realize that when you present that paperwork, when you come in with that bully headset and say, hey, I need the split sheet to be filled out in the middle of the session. People say, well, you're killing the vibe. Yeah, you're killing the vibe, and you're potentially killing your money. Like, that's just the reality of the situation. Like, it's no one wants to discuss that stuff when they're during the creative process, and no one wants to do it. And that's just me talking from that's me saying that from a producer's standpoint and being hundreds of sessions. No one wants to talk about that stuff when they're recording in the middle of that stuff. No one wants to do that. When the album is finished, when the single is finished, and now we're talking about it's getting ready to come out, people are going to start having those conversations because they know they have to get their things in order. They just can't take people's music and can't just put people's music out without any recourse. Then they'll start having those conversations with you. Those are the best times, in my opinion, to do that. If you are a new artist and you're working with another new artist and, there's really no skin in the game, yeah, I guess you can present your situation and make you feel better. But it still doesn't guarantee anything, right? Because, it doesn't guarantee anything. Again, there's certain levels of protection that you need to take. But from my vantage point and from what I've seen in my experience is it's always best to kind of work with what's going on, just kind of catch the vibe, what's happening in the session itself, paying attention to what's going on, and really building your relationship with the artist. Without building your relationship with the artist, you can almost rest assured that this music ain't coming out, right? And if the music doesn't come out, then there's nothing that you can hold your head on. You can't put it on your resume. You can't put it on your discography. You can't go out and say you did this, and you can't leverage what you did with someone else if it never comes out, right? So my advice to a lot of the artists out there is look, when you're out here trying to network, make sure that you're networking. You put certain things in place to protect yourself. Meaning, if you're writing or recording, just make sure you're keeping, some sort of active recording of what you've done, whether it be the melodies, the lyrics, etc. Now you have your phone. There's so many ways for you to be able to keep a timestamp as to what happened and when it happened and so forth. Keep those things together. If you want to take it a step further, you can pay a few dollars. You can copyright your portions of your music, and then you're protected, right? And if anything goes left, you have the evidence for recourse. But again, it's probably the best course of action to basically, is, in my opinion, is better to have a song come out. It's better to have the song come out and the song goes big, and you have the evidence that you've worked on the record, right? You've protected yourself, and if you have to have a little bit of a legal recourse, you do that, right? At least there's a compensation in that situation, right? So at least if it does go left, okay, you can at least have some sort of legal recourse and you can get some compensation. Versus you try to take care of everything up front and nothing comes out at all, right? At least in some case there's something that you can get if it comes out unauthorized versus it not coming out at all. If it doesn't come out at all, there's nothing for you to get, nothing out of nothing. If it comes out, even if it's unauthorized, it's like you can still at least go and have some recourse in that, and there's still something that you can gain from that. You can gain from the exposure, you can gain from the record being out, you can gain monetary reward, etc., etc. But if the record never comes out, you don't gain anything at all, right? So what I'm trying to tell people is don't cut yourself off at the knees too early. Trying to really jump into the situation and make it into something that it's just making it into something that it doesn't need to be turned into, right? And then back to the attorney situation again. Listen, attorneys make a gang of money off of unknowing artists, right? I've been lucky, or we've been lucky to have an attorney that we've worked with for some time, and he knows us personally, and that sort of thing, and that works very well for us. But I can't say everyone has that relationship with their legal counsel, even though it would be nice, but that's not always the case. So what I say to that is, when you want to get your legal counsel involved, like I said, you want to just make sure that there's some money imminent, right? That you've talked to the artist, and there's basically a definitive time that it's going to be released. It may be budgeted for what you did. Okay, now it's time for you to get a few dollars. Okay, now you try to find an attorney that's not going to take all the money from you before you get any money, and that sometimes can be a little bit of a challenge, but it's the best way to kind of move versus trying to get the attorneys involved too early for things that may or may not come out, and if they, and in most cases for a lot of artists, a lot of this stuff isn't budgeted, right? So you're already going to be in a lot of cases in the red, right? Like in the red, like you're spending money and you haven't earned anything. So again, the way that a lot of these records come out now, it's a miracle people earn anything, right? On some of these records. Some of these records are really double linoleum, and they're not coming out. When they do come out, they're not selling any or streaming any numbers at all. So, you just kind of want to be very mindful of how you're spending your money in the name of protection, in the name of get your paperwork right, in your name of, it's like, at the end of the day, I think this is all about us trying to earn some money from our art. And you just don't want to put yourself at a constant negative, like all of the time. Like it's like I'm at a negative every time trying to do the business, and paying lawyer fees left and right. Like, and there's no way for you to make this money back because it's not coming from streaming, right? Like It's not coming from streaming. If we're being honest, it's like streaming is probably the slowest way of getting your money back. You have to be a lot more savvy and trying to make sure that you can establish things with your fans and get some shows or get some merch really going. Like if you're trying to do it off of streams, good luck with that, right? Because it's a different man's game now, and you need a lot of money to get the attention of people to really listen to your music, and that's just the reality of what's going on right now. So, my whole spiel today is, making sure that you're not allocating your money and your resources to, to things that are inconsequential. You have to really prioritize where you want to spend your money. And like I said, you probably want to take the courses of action where you can protect yourself at minimal cost. And at the same time, you're creating a catalog. You don't want to be in a situation where you're running around trying to get all these records together with different people. And you're saying, why these records aren't coming out, or why this isn't happening. These records aren't coming out 9 times out of 10. Either the music isn't as good as you think it is, or your relationship with that artist isn't as good as you thought it was. Because I can really lean back on a lot of music that got released for us, and that was based solely off of the relationship, right? It wasn't that it was maybe the hottest production ever, right? In some cases, there were some things that were just dope. I can't say that it wasn't. And then there were things that were mediocre, in my opinion. I can critique my own music, but the relationship was there, and while the relationship is there, the artist wanted us to share in that revenue and breaking bread, and that was the situation, and that's what happens in this business a lot. There is like a supreme level of nepotism, and you have to really kind of be able to crack that code to get into those rooms and get that access to make sure that you can build those relationships with those artists if you don't have them, right? And if you don't have those relationships with the artists, you're just going to be another kind of random person coming through, and your music is going to have to really resonate on a super, super, super high level in order for you to get through the whole process of I like the record, or I like the track, or I like the song. Okay, let's record the song. Okay, we've recorded the song. Let's mix the song. Let's master the song. Okay, now let's just think about releasing the song. Like, there's a lot of a process to it. So again, if you're not savvy and trying to make sure that you're building those relationships and also having good music, it's like there's no chance of it coming out. So what I don't want folks to do is, to go in there and, waving their paperwork. Hey, I need you to sign this paperwork before the session is over. All right. No, we're not going to really do that. Hey, go to the next track. That's what's going to happen. And I just see it happen way too often. It's like, hey, you know what? You load up that other song. And that's how it works. It's like you go in there, you say something that's off base, or you turn the artist off. Yo, you know what? I like that other drum we was working on the other day. Yo, load that up. All of a sudden, the song that you was working on together, all of a sudden, it just takes a left turn. And that's how you know to kill the vibe. And that's just me talking from being in countless sessions with countless different artists. It's like that's how you know. It's all of a sudden they're excited about what they were doing with you, and all of a sudden the mood changes, and in an instant they're going toward doing something else, and that's what happens, right? And this is just part of the game, and I want to make people really be aware of that. And so it's not me saying, hey, don't get your paperwork right. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is there's a time and a place for it all, and you have to be very, very, very keen and have a certain level of discernment to know when to present those things, so that you're not making the artist uncomfortable or cleaning or whatever the vibe is. Now, if it's your session and you're the artist and you require split sheet, so forth and so on, you can get and do that because you're the one calling the shots. It's your situation. You can require that. That's it's on your budget. It's on your dime. Then you do that, right? Is everybody good with that? Most people are. Most people aren't. It just depends, again, it's up to you to kind of see what the vibe is. Because when you're collaborating with others, it can create a situation where it makes it tense. Most folks don't want to talk about business during the creative process. And there are some platforms that say, no, you must talk about the business. You must have this difficult conversation. You can, but not to the detriment of the music. If the music doesn't get done, or if it's going to stop the music from getting done, if it's going to hamper the creative process, then it needs to be talked about at a different time. Now that's just my 2 cents. What do I know? I'm just a platinum producer. I don't know, right? I'm just saying what I'm saying. But in any event, I'm hoping that that'll provide some insight for some folks who want to really go around and who want to take care of their business and want to kind of get into this game. And like, that's the whole key of it all. It's just us trying to really provide that type of information, that type of insight. Now, for some, they may like that insight. For others, they may say, hey, you're a little bit off base. I can just talk from our experiences, right? And in most cases, we'll have a lot more experience than a lot of other people. So it's just me giving that an insight. And what I'm hoping is that by me giving some insight, artists may be able to navigate this business and save themselves some time, right? Because a lot of it is just about saving time. And when you save time, you're able to save money. And I think those are the things that we need to kind of talk about, and making sure that we're sharing that information so that artists have different avenues and are not wasting their time. That's the biggest thing. But again, this is the Arkatech Beatz Music Business Podcast. We are here every week trying to give you that game, trying to give you that insight. We got a new website design coming out. It's going to basically have the new beat store. We're back with the beats. We had taken those down for a long time, but we're back. We're putting those things in, and then we've created some new drum and sample packs. So that's another thing, as well as we're putting a lot of our new NFT collections out, and some of our NFT inspired merchandise, which I think people will find very interesting on some of these projects that we're working with. But you definitely want to just take a minute, check that out. We're also working on a music business course with regards to music publishing. I think music publishing is a very misunderstood portion of the business, even though it's the largest earner for a lot of independent artists, that they're not realizing it. So what my goal is to not only create a course around it for people to kind of understand what the situation is behind that, but also maybe create some reading material behind that as well. And the goal is just to get folks more versed in the process and the business of music publishing, because it can really determine whether you make money in this business or whether you don't make any money at all. So that's just some things that are coming on the horizon. Just keep a lookout for it at www.arkatechbeatz.com. You'll be able to see all of the things that are coming, all of the new tracks, previews, etc. And just we're gonna keep it going just like that. But this is Juggernaut, Arkatech Beatz. Till next time.